Alright, good afternoon everybody. I hope that your test went well today. Today we're going to be watching a video over lesson 2.1, which is classifying rational numbers. It is page 31 through page 34, so hopefully you guys can pause the video real quick and take out both those pages. So if you haven't, go ahead and do that, please. Alright, so what we want you guys to do is go ahead and read through the lesson like we did the last video, and as you're doing it, go ahead and copy down the information. But I suggest that as you're doing it, you read through the instructions to kind of help you better understand what you're copying down. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and do Explore Activity, the first one, all the way A through F, and then here in just a second we will move on to the next page. Alright, I'm on page 32 now, so the Explore Activity is continued. So go ahead and read through the Reflect and answer those two questions. So go ahead and pause the video and then we'll move into rational numbers. Alright, we're now at rational numbers, and remember the little QR code. If you're having questions, go ahead and scan that. Use that as a resource. That'll help you out a ton. Also, remember that highlighted words are probably things that you need to be aware of. So a rational number is any number that can be written as A over B, where A and B are integers and B is not equal to 0. So just go ahead and make yourself a little note of that. Go ahead and pause the video and copy down this part, please. Alright, now we have moved on to page 33, and this is the very top, classifying rational numbers. And we've got another highlighted word. This is a Venn diagram is a visual representation used to show the relationships between groups. Alright, so that's probably something that you guys need to be aware of. So if you're not, go ahead and look into that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoot it down a little bit so that you can see what's left. And remember that we have this little My Notes section on the side. So if you want to add anything to that, go ahead. But once you get to example 2, go ahead and pause the video and fill in that, please. Alright, so we're on the last page now, and up at the top it's your turn. So we've got just a little bit left, so I'm going to ask you guys to pause the video, fill that information in, and then I will walk you through the guided practice. So at this time, go ahead and pause the video and fill in your turn, please. Alright guys, let's look at the guided practice. I'm going to walk you through this, so this is one that you can just take at your own time. You know, if you need to pause the video to catch up, go ahead, but if not, just stick with me. So number 1 says, Sarah and 4 friends are decorating picture frames with ribbon. They have 4 rolls of ribbon to share evenly. How does this situation represent division? Well, there are 4 friends, including Sarah, which would give us a total of 5. We want to separate 4 rolls of ribbon into 5. So what I would do is I would take my 4 rolls of ribbon and divide that by 5. Or another way that you could say that is 4 rolls of ribbon divided among 5 friends. Okay, so if we think about that, what it's really just telling us is that you're going to take the 4 rolls and you want everybody to have the same amount of ribbon, so you're going to split it up 5 different ways. So all the question wanted you to do is just put that into an actual phrase based off of the information that it gave us. Then part B of number 1 says, how much ribbon does each person receive? So we talked about how a fraction is actually meaning division. And so for instance, this one is saying we have 5 total people, which would be our denominator, and if we're going to split that evenly, everybody's going to get 4/5 of the ribbon. Everybody would get 4/5 of the ribbon, and that's how you would divide evenly among those 5 people. Alright, number 2 says write each rational number in the form A over B, where A and B are integers. So right here we've got 7/10 because it's a decimal. So if we wrote that as a fraction, it's just going to be 7 over 10. And that fraction is the same, or it's equal to 7/10 as a decimal. Alright, next we have 3, and we have -29. Well, since -29 is a whole number, it's not going to be put into a fraction. But if we wanted to try to write it as a fraction, we would just write -29 over 1. Because if we divided -29 by 1, we're going to get -29. So that's the way that you can write a whole number as a fraction, is you would just put the actual whole number over 1. And then number 4, we have a mixed number. And so if you guys remember the Texas trick, we're going to multiply our denominator by our whole number, which 8 times 3 is going to give us 24. And then we're going to add 1 to that, which should be 25. And that's going to give us 25 over 3. And in case you guys didn't remember the Texas trick, we have the T and the X, and that's the abbreviation for the great state of Texas that we live in. Alright guys, so now we are at number 5. And what I want to point out first to you is the Venn diagram over here on the side. That was one of the highlighted words that we discussed earlier. You should have read about. So the way that this works is rational numbers surround integers and whole numbers. So that means that integers and whole numbers are rational numbers, but rational numbers are not necessarily integers or whole numbers. So that's why they are circled by it, because they're still inside of the big circle. Okay, we'll discuss that more in class if you're a little bit confused, but I just want you to understand that integers and whole numbers are rational numbers, but a rational number is not a whole number. So last unit we discussed integers, and remember integers are positive and negative whole numbers. They always have to be a whole number, but it can be positive or negative. And a rational number is what we're discussing this unit. So if you have forgotten what that is, go ahead and take a look back in your notes and get yourself a refresher. Alright, so rational numbers are integers, and b is just not equal to 0. So if we look at negative 15, this is an integer because it is a whole number. But it is also a rational number because it has an integer, and b, or the denominator, which we could say is 1 because it's a whole number like we did on example 3, is not equal to 0. So this is an integer and a rational number. Okay, if we look at number 6. Alright, so rational numbers. Remember, they're out by themselves, and integers and whole numbers are included inside of them. So a rational number, our b is not equal to 0, that works. We do have a whole number, but they don't fall into the exact same category. So this is just going to be a rational number. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our two answers and we're going to put them in the Venn diagram to help give a visual of that. So we're going to put 5 and 10/11 in the rational number section, and then we're going to put negative 15 in the integers, because that is the next step after the rational number. It's more specifically an integer. It is a rational number, but it's more specifically an integer. So you could have more than one answer. What we want to know is what the most specific of those three are. Alright, so the last question, number 7, says, how is a rational number that is not an integer different from a rational number that is an integer? Okay, so like we said a few minutes ago, an integer is a positive or negative whole number. So if the denominator does not divide evenly into our numerator, then they would be a rational number and not an integer. So let me give you an example of that. So if I had 5 over 2 and I divided 5 by 2, that would give me 2 and a half. That is not a whole number, so therefore this is a non-integer. But now another example would be 4 over 2, and when I divide 4 by 2, I get 2, which is a whole number, and therefore it is an integer. Alright guys, don't forget to do the Google Docs. If you have any questions, please put them in the box or mark them so that you can ask us tomorrow in class. Good luck, and we will see you tomorrow.